Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Dynamic Dilettante. It is great to have you along. We went and saw Doctor Strange this past week, and I was really kind of excited about going to see it. And is that the dog? Is he? Wow, he's making a lot of noise. Excuse me, our dog, our director, and our dog, by the name of Rocco. He's over there scratching around. So forgive the distraction. We went and saw Doctor Strange this past weekend, and we'll be talking about it, sharing our thoughts on that, and we'll also be weighing in on Star Trek's Strange New Worlds, which debuted on Paramount Plus also last week, and which I actually liked. Star Trek Strange New Worlds better than Doctor Strange, I think. So we'll talk about it. Thanks for letting us join you. I'm not sure where to start with Doctor Strange. I thought it was initially my first reaction after I'd seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. My first reaction was, I think this one is better than the first Doctor Strange and upon reflection, because Katie had a different opinion. And upon reflection, I'm kind of like, yeah, I think I prefer the first Doctor Strange. Things were better explained in terms of what was going on. And we want to warn you, we'll be giving spoilers in our reviews tonight. So I don't want to ruin, if you haven't seen Doctor Strange and you don't want to hear a bunch of information that might otherwise ruin the movie for you, you've been warned that we are going to share spoilers. But as I kind of reflect back on it, there were things that were happening pretty quickly throughout this movie, and I had been following it, and they had cut and they had lengthened its runtime by quite a little bit. There was supposed to be a lot more information in there, and based on what I saw, I'm not certain that what they cut would have really added any more beyond what we saw to the film, and we'll see. Once the DVD comes out, or you can download it, so on. What scenes they had, if any. But it was, looking back on it, I thought it was, there were things about it I liked, there were things about it that I didn't like, and there were a number of things I thought that were a little bit confusing, especially toward the end. And that doesn't bother me too much. They do the cut scenes at the end of the movie, and so oftentimes that's not explained. It'll be explained in additional movies. So the hardcore fans are out there right now. What did it mean? Again, I want to warn you, we're giving spoilers. Doctor Strange suddenly has got a third eye that appears, and you see that at the very end, he's got this third eye, and it's like, what does that mean? I'm never too worried about that because that's going to be explained in subsequent films. It's like the first time Thanos appeared. It was at the end of of one of the Avengers movies. You see Thanos, and at the time, I wasn't really sure who it was. I'm not necessarily the biggest Marvel comic guy. And as I heard about it, read about it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know who Thanos is. And I kind of felt that way after the cutscenes. So some folks are diving in and just trying to explain the cutscenes. I'm like, I think maybe you got to explain the rest of the movie too, baby. There's a lot that happens in it. Yeah, people they're kind of tearing through from one universe to another.
The one thing I didn't really like about it was Of the Marvel movies, Doctor Strange is probably one of my favorite characters. But the thing is, with Doctor Strange, with this second one, it's kind of all over the place. There's not one cogent theme like there was in the first one where it really focused on Steven. This
Right.
one, you're focusing on, you would think, hey, it's Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, but it actually focuses more on the Red Witch or Wanda Maximoff, through a large chunk of it, and then the other character they introduced through there is America Chavez.
Mm-hmm.
But the only one throughout the entire movie who gets any real character development is Steven,
Yes.
where they're looking a little bit more through the different multiverses about his relationship with Christine.
Right.
And that's just
Essentially they bring her back then, and
right. So that's one of the things that was a little it's like you've got this big nice canvas you get to work with, but you just kind of let a 2-year-old paint on it. Let me paint on it.
Well, one of the things that was incredible, okay, they travel through these different worlds and they do it very quickly. There's a period where you watch them traversing through this portal and through different worlds, and it happens, from one to the next to the next to the next until they get to where they're going. And one is like a technicolor kind of painting, like is colors swirling, and you're like, what is it? And suddenly they're out of that, they're into another universe. That was bizarre, I thought, and really, really kind of unnecessary. And then they wind up in a place where you've got all these great characters, and I've got forgive me here, I want to get as we talk about the cast, you see,
Mordo comes back.
Yeah, John Krasinski is there as Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. You see,
because Mordo brings him into the Illuminati.
Yes. And then Anson Mount is there as Black Bolt. You see all these characters, and then they begin to destroy them all. They're, here's this world. We got Patrick Stewart is there as Dr. Xavier in this cool chair that everybody apparently was excited about because it was a chair that had been used elsewhere in the series, and folks were excited about the chair. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to be excited about more than that. It's gonna take a little bit more than that to get me all worked up. So you kill Patrick Stewart, you kill all of and it seemed to me that the only reason for having that universe was they could absolutely destroy it and kill everybody in it, which is basically kind of what they did.
Yeah, the whole Illuminati plot point thing, to me, it just seems like it was a convenient way to get some cameos in. And then it just to use it as a vehicle to try and bring Christine back.
Yeah.
So that Christine
it seems like that whole world that they're on, whatever Earth, then they give numbers. I don't recall the number, but it seemed like everybody there was there only to be exterminated,
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It just needed to bring Christine back so that she could ultimately, save Doctor Strange in the end, right?
Right. Well, which was kind of the role of America Chavez, that she is the character that winds up, really, she's the one with the power, and what Doctor Strange has done is he is encouraging her, he's not, in a way, he doesn't really come off as the hero. She does, even though he's the one making difficult choices, and encouraging her because she expected him to kill her. Another version of Strange in another universe had been trying to kill her. And so she is expecting that throughout the entire film that Stephen Strange is going to turn on her and kill her. And of course he doesn't, because that's not who he is. And yet she is the one who somehow comes off as the hero of the film. And I think that's an unfortunate direction that a lot of films are going. Marvel certainly is no different, where it's nothing. I have no problem with strong female characters. I have no problem with them. But just to remind you, it is a Doctor Strange movie,
Is it?
and she's the one who winds up, I thought, rather than him.
Because, yes, obviously we're talking spoiler alerts here, because America Chavez is the one who can walk through the multiverse, and that's what
Yes.
Wanda is trying to get to, because Wanda's trying to get back to her kids.
Right.
And so she gets a hold of the Darkhold. The Darkhold's allowing her to go through the multiverse at that point, but she needs to be there. But so that whole theme about, you've got Doctor Strange, but America Chavez is kind of the handoff there.
Yes.
That's the same thing that's happening in the spin-off in the Disney Plus series, Hawkeye. Exact same thing. They're trying to, have Hawkeye, the original Hawkeye, step back. I can't think of the guy's name.
Yeah, I can't think of it either. It'll
Step back a
he's
little bit.
terrific.
Yeah. And then they're trying to have a new female Hawkeye take his place.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing with that spin-off series. But
And that's the same thing that's going on in everything.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, that you see that over and over and over again. It's that we're seeing that in Thor. You're seeing, I just, to me, it's frustrating. Let those heroes be heroes. Let's show some strong female heroes, by all means, tell their stories. I have no problem, with the movies that they have been making with the strong Marvel female characters and letting them have their moment. I think they've been terrific. But what I don't like is diminishing the part of men in order to elevate the women in their films. And it's become a real problem with Marvel. It's one of the issues I have with most of the Marvel movies and material that I wind up watching now. Saw the same thing in Moon Knight. You and I talked about this last week. Moon Knight did the very same thing.
that's kind of the formula right now. But also the other thing is the pacing with Doctor Strange was just weird. The first half is really slow, and then the second half is just like this disjointed amalgamation of everything. All this, I get that they use a lot of CGI in the whole Doctor Strange series, but the thing that really, you remember the Transformer movie and how it got so much flack for using so much CGI?
Yeah.
It almost got to that point where it was feeling like that. There's just way too much CGI going on, and I don't know. To me, it also lacked a lot of humor that the original one had. And I get it was a little bit of a darker tone,
Right.
the movie as a whole. But one thing Marvel movies are known for is just when they're written, they have that witty humor, and that's the one thing that saves them as far as versus DC movies. DC movies typically are very dark, and the humor they do have, it sometimes misses the mark a little bit.
A lot.
But it just...
If there's even any humor in it.
Right. And Doctor Strange 2 kind of gave me more of a feeling of that they were swapping some of the... It didn't have that humor in it, that quick-witted humor that even though it might... I mean, you had like Infinity Wars. There's a lot of bad stuff going on in Infinity Wars.
Right.
But there's still time for some of that humor. And it just wasn't there for me in the movie either.
No, I agree. The most recent Marvel movie that you and I had seen was Spider-Man No Way Home.
And had great humor in it.
And I think that movie was far superior to this new Doctor Strange. Far. Much, much better.
Yep. And I guess there's just, it seems like they tried to cram way too much plot into too small a package. Where it's just, and I don't know if that had something to do with like the last minute cuts they did, because I know you were saying earlier when we had just started tonight that was actually supposed to be a significantly longer movie than what it was, because the runtime on it now
then they had a different director who would come in too. Yeah. Remember, Sam Raimi came in and directed the film at about the last minute. Right. He came in and put the whole thing together. And one of the things I will tell you that I did love was Bruce Campbell,
Yeah.
who had a bit part. Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi are very good friends. They have made a number of movies together over the years. It's one of the reasons why in all the Spider-Man films that Sam Raimi had made, Bruce Campbell plays a bit part in each one of them. And Bruce Campbell in the part that he played in Doctor Strange 2, I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, it's just I don't know. I was a little, I don't know, it left me wanting a lot more.
Agreed.
And it's kind of like you sit and you look at it and you're like, man, there's this huge thing they could do so much with. And I know there's some theories like this is where Marvel's going now, is they're going to use this whole multiverse platform to, take characters out, bring characters in. Who knows what the heck they're going to do with it. But I walked out and I'm just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like we went and saw Batman in the movie theaters. We went and saw Batman in the movie theater. We went and saw Spider-Man in the movie theater.
Yep.
I walked out of both of those going, man, that was a good movie. I want to go see it again. But I have no desire to go see this one again.
Yeah. And honestly, even though I'm taking my kids this weekend, were it not for the fact I'd already invited them to go, I don't think I would go see it either. It'll be interesting to see how I react to it on a second viewing.
Mm-hmm.
If it hits me differently than it did the first time.
I got you. But yeah, I say if you want to go see it, like I said,
make up your own mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're just offering our thoughts with it.
For me, Marvel movies have always kind of like struck my funny bone, and they've always just kind of appealed to me a little bit more than DC movies have, just because again,
because DC has not gotten it right.
They just seem to be a little bit better written typically, but man, this one just really missed the mark.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It was funny because we see John Krasinski again as Mr. Fantastic, right, as Reed Richards,
right,
and people were
cheering
in the movie theater, only to turn right around and kill the character.
Yep.
10 minutes later, he's dead.
Yep.
As is everybody else on that world. And I thought that just seems like it seemed like an excuse. Well, we can kill all these characters because they're not the prime Earth. I forget the numbers.
I think it's Earth 686 or something
right,
like
whatever.
That.
The DC used to call it Earth Prime.
See, that naming schema makes a little more sense.
Right. So you kill all of those characters because, hey, you can always go back to Earth Prime and you got all the same people there. That just doesn't have much meaning.
No.
You're just getting to know these characters that have already been killed and destroyed.
Right.
I'm not sure I understand that choice.
No.
And Anson Mount, to my shock, was in the movie. I had no idea that Anson Mount was in it.
Right.
Who, and we'll talk more about, he played Black Bolt. And we'll talk more about Anson Mount in a moment, because he is in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, playing Captain Pike. But as Black Bolt, he is wearing, the costume that he's wearing is covering most of his face. You see his eyes. You don't see much more than that, honestly, about him. And again, Black Bolt gets among the characters unceremoniously killed. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a waste of some of these terrific actors and their characters. So there's a lot of that in this movie.
Half a second here. Sorry, just had to verify something real quick.
That's
Make sure
okay.
we were still firing on all cylinders here. But Laura from the chat's wondering, she had heard that Doctor Strange was a bit dark.
Yes.
And how would you say it's a little darker than the average DC Marvel movie?
because everybody in it is dying. I mean, and they're being killed really kind of unceremoniously. I mean, it's like heads getting ripped off. I mean, just short of that, it's pretty dark. And you really can't put a smiley face on that.
Pretty much Wanda whacks off everybody in about 5 minutes of the entire Illuminati.
Yeah. And what did you think of that about the way they treated Wanda's character?
I've always been just as far as the on-screen depiction, because again, I'm not a huge comic book. I don't read comic books, so most of the characters I've been introduced through Marvel have been through these movies.
And I think that's probably true for most people.
Right. And Wanda's always been a character I enjoyed. WandaVision for me didn't really work very well. And again, it's not a one you do not have to go see WandaVision or watch WandaVision in order to be able to understand everything in Doctor Strange 2. It will help, but it's not necessary. And save yourself 5 episodes of pain and discontent. But I don't know. I mean, I can understand seeing WandaVision and where it went with Doctor Strange 2. It makes sense how she was trying to get to her kids, because that was like she had created the whole thing in WandaVision so that she could have a family with 2 kids with Vision. Well, Vision ended up getting killed, and so she creates this whole, and she enslaves a whole town. That's the whole thing in WandaVision. So you see where it kind of drives her to almost madness.
Right. And she's looking for a universe where those 2 children actually exist.
Right. Where
and
she
are real. Yeah.
And so that she can be their mother.
Right.
And ultimately that's how they stop her is in Doctor Strange 2, is because she's seeing the pain and the discontent she's creating for those 2, and the fear that she's creating for those 2 children. And that's what ultimately stops her.
Yes.
In Doctor Strange 2. And I think that worked, but I've heard stories they're bringing her back. They're not bringing her back. Who knows?
Well, and if you bring her back, what do? Well, you go to that other Earth where she, and that's the character then you bring, back or bring forward.
Yep.
We'll have to wait and see what they wind up doing. But I had read some stuff about, there was a piece that I forget where I came across it, and I was a bit shocked. They were making the case how it is Wanda, who the Scarlet Witch, who is really, she's the hero of the film. She's the hero. She's the real hero, more than Doctor Strange. She's the hero of the film. And I'm like, what? That's like saying Adolf Hitler is the hero of World War II. You know what I mean? She killed all these people. She killed, literally, willing to sacrifice. She was attacking and killing people by the dozens and the hundreds, throughout this movie. And I'm like, how do you wind up? It says something about our culture today that anybody could watch that film and somehow think she's the real hero of the movie. No, not at all. Even if at the end she has remorse and then she winds up taking her own life, okay, but it's a little bit late for all of the people that you've already killed previously in the movie.
Right.
I just don't see her as a heroic character.
So every good villain has something that drives them, right? I mean, Darth Vader wanted to master the Force, and he wanted to find his children.
That wasn't what I thought you were going to say. Wants to what?
Oh, he wants to master the Force.
Yes.
I mean, you've got the
agreed.
Joker, who's just batshit crazy. You've got, pick it. So Wanda's thing is she wants to find her children. That's great. That's what drives her to evil. And that may be an admirable thing, but she's creating so much pain and discontent. No, she's not a good person.
Yeah, exactly. She's not a good person.
She doesn't make good choices, and you don't get a star for that. You destroyed how many people? Everybody who's killed in that movie is pretty much killed by Wanda.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it's again, it's kind of a dark, much darker film than the first Doctor Strange. And I understand, Katie, why you thought that was a better film. It was a lot more uplifting than this one.
It was. I mean, it was fun. Watch it. It was all good. And yeah, God, it was just
Yeah. If you want to see a good Marvel movie, go see Spider-Man No Way Home. Much, much better film.
half a second here. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make everything work here.
Well, I'm trying to think if I've got anything to add to. I really don't. I mean,
Yeah. I like I said, watch it, don't watch it. Those who are diehard fans are gonna go see it one way or another. Those who are just kind of casual
yeah.
viewers probably aren't gonna see it. Um, you know,
Make sure you look for Bruce Campbell.
yeah.
Stay until he's funny. And
So,
one of the things you and I both commented on this. One of the things we missed was seeing Stan Lee.
yes. Yep. I
You
miss seeing
know,
Stan Lee.
I always enjoyed the Stan Lee cameos in the films. And as we've gone on, you know, more and more films that we're not seeing Stan in anymore. And that's disappointing.
It is. He was I mean, he was always kind of like, where's the Stanley? That was the obvious Easter egg you could always find.
Yes.
But it's what do you do? I mean, it's too bad they can't like CGI him, at least CGI him in.
I'm glad they're not, to be honest with you.
What the heck?
You all right?
Oh, restream being restream. Oh, sorry.
So, and let's move on and talk about Strange New Worlds. This is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. This is the story of Captain Pike, as played by Anson Mount, with the gray highlights in his hair and looking, I think, pretty striking.
Dapper.
He's a hell of a handsome guy, Anson Mount. I've always thought Hell on Wheels. I thought the same thing. He was great in that show. There were things about Strange New Worlds that I enjoyed, but again, there are things that are being done that I really don't like. You know, you've got Anson Mount, and then you've got and I forget his name. It was Ethan, who was playing Spock in the film. Ethan Peck, who plays Mr. Spock in the film. And of course, they're the only white men who are on the show. They're the only ones. And everybody else is there's a real some of the characters I didn't really quite understand, but I thought, okay, I don't want to be in a rush. Let's give them a little bit of time to develop. I will say that one of the things that I didn't like about Strange New Worlds is they want to show a relative, an ancestor of Khan Noonien Singh, Khan from Star Trek II and Space Seed, the original Star Trek series. So they wanted to have some ancestor of Khan's on board the Enterprise. And I got to tell you, I did not understand that. I did not like that. That just did not work at all for me. The character in the show is incredibly unlikable. There isn't anything about her that I liked.
She's a bit of a Karen.
So I just don't understand that direction. And again, spoilers here as we talk about this. One of the things that I really did like was that it showed Pike seeing himself. Pike has seen his own future. And for those who are fans of Star Trek, the original series, you know what happens to Captain Pike. Captain Pike winds up in exposed to delta rays and is disfigured and all he can do is move around in you don't see anything really except the upper portion of his body. Um, he winds up just horribly disfigured, and he has seen that future for himself, and he's trying to come to grips with that. That was one of the things I appreciated and I liked. I went, okay, they're trying to explore this. He is grappling with having seen what's going to happen to him in the future. So he knows this is coming. How he's worried about, is it going to happen, next week, next month? How much time is he going to have? What's going to happen after that? And he's struggling with all that. I appreciated that. And he is looking, for instance, he will look into a window a port window outside the ship to look outside, and he will see his reflection in the glass, and he sees that version of himself that he's seen in the vision.
I believe what you see on screen there, that's Captain Pike.
Yes. In the original series.
In the original series.
Yes. So he sees himself not unlike that. And that part I really liked. Him trying to grapple and come to grips with his future and what's going to happen, what he knows is going to happen to him.
So for somebody who's not as deep into Star Trek as say you are.
Yeah.
For me, it's a Star Trek Strange New Worlds is, if I remember right, when I'm reading through some of these things on why they're rebooting some of these series, besides to make more money, it was to try and draw more fans into the franchise. And it's approachable in that sense. And it's something, if I knew nothing about Star Trek, I can sit down and watch that show.
Good.
And I liked it for the most part. I mean, there were some things that I'm like, meh, okay. There's some riot scenes towards the end of the first episode where you're like,
talk about that.
Well,
because that really jumped off the screen.
I don't know if you want to go there right now, but I'll go there. It was one of the things I didn't particularly care for. They encounter a species where they have a warp. What did they call it? A warp weapon?
Yes.
Or warp bomb or warp.
Yeah, basically they have invented warp, but not as an engine, not as a propulsion system. They're planning to use it as a weapon
to take out the other side of the world where they're in a civil war for however long. And the whole setup for the first episode is that the Captain Pike and his crew are making first contact with this civilization because they have warp tech, or they detected warp technology. Well,
and it turns out they gave it to them.
Right.
The way they picked up the warp technology was because some
device through Star Trek Discovery.
Right, they had been too close to the planet, and when they were using warp themselves, a number of their ships, and these folks then built on it, and of course Star Trek being Star Trek, the captain has to come down and be super diplomatic. And they're Earth, back in the 2100s, before our Third World War started, we were at Civil War and all these riots. And they've got all this imagery playing on these scenes. Well, of course, all the imagery they're using is from January 6th.
January 6th. I mean, there's tons of riots that we've had, but that's the depiction they're using.
That's the one they use.
Come on, really?
I would agree. And they're showing the signs from that. You know exactly what it is.
Oh, they don't even leave that to the imagination.
No, and that's done by design. And one of the other complaints I had about the show, I was excited about this because they're saying, we are creating an action-adventure series. This is going to be action-adventure, going to be a lot of focus on the action. Where the hell was the action? There wasn't any action. I mean, there really wasn't.
Spock Vulcan nerve pinched a few people. Come on.
They're walking through. They've got disguises on, and Spock is losing his. And so, what? That's the action. I mean, give me a break. And then again, a great moment where Pike, I thought, goes in and he's talking to these to the people on this planet and sharing what has happened and in Earth's past. Okay, fine, but where's the action? So what we saw in the first episode is not the action adventure series that they promised. We've not seen that yet.
I think they're starting to adopt Disney's model for episodes where we're going to drag you along for the first 4 episodes, and then we might give you something.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, series like that, I need a hook. I like to have a hook where it gets me in, it draws me in quickly. I mean, seeing Anson Mount with, the big beard and stuff on, I'm like, oh, hey, look, he looks like he's straight out of Hell on Wheels. But
and again, one of the conversations that they had on, among people on the show and with Paramount was, are we going to make an episodic show? In other words, we will have episodes that stand by themselves, just like the original Star Trek. There was only 1 2-part episode in the original Star Trek. All the rest of the episodes were 1-episode shots. That's what you got. And that's what they're planning to do with this. So if you're going to take that approach and it's going to be action adventure, you better get to the action adventure and you better do it before the credits roll, before the opening credits roll. And you go back and you watch the original Star Trek, they were setting the hook in that very first act. That didn't happen in this.
No.
Again, there were things I liked about it, but to say it's an action adventure series, I think that's being pretty gracious, because it's not what we saw in the first episode.
Maybe we call it a drama action adventure in that order. I'm willing to give it a few more weeks, like I said, before I completely write it off.
Yeah, I was. They did show Samuel Kirk, who is Captain Kirk's
Lieutenant Kirk in this.
Yes. So they showed Samuel Kirk, his father, but we have not yet seen. We know that James Kirk will be in it,
right?
But he was not in the first episode that we watched.
He'll probably show up like one of the.
Probably. So, yeah, I was trying to see in terms of the other folks that were in it. I will have to say I like Dr. Mbenga and what they were doing with him. For original series fans, you remember Dr. Mbenga because he was on Star Trek, the original series. And I like the actor who was playing him here. They also showed us the first captain of the Enterprise, Robert April, who was previously a white character, who's now a black character, and I have some patience with that. Commissioner Gordon in the Batman would be a great example. Historically, right. Commissioner Gordon has been white. And so they cast it, I thought, incredibly well in the Batman. And I'm okay with that. But there is a lot of those kinds of changes in Strange New Worlds. And we'll see how it's going to resonate. I don't expect that this is a show that they're producing for for old-time Star Trek fans like me.
You've got, they're also bringing Nurse Chapel back.
Yes.
And
do you like her in the series?
As it was presented, a little chaotic. I didn't quite know what to make of her.
She seemed to be comedy relief.
Yeah,
kind of is what she seemed to be.
Her medical
and I like the character, Christine Chapel. Yeah,
her medical practice seems to be more like whack-a-mole. But hey, what'd you think about the new number 1 then?
You mean the one the ancestor of Khan Nooney and Singh, or the
character number 1?
Right. Well, there are 2 number 1s in this first episode.
Yes. the original, or who's
Right.
supposed to be number one.
I like her, actually. Yeah. Great, strong character.
Yep.
Yeah,
Because that's what's originally drawing them to the planet anyways, their scout ship.
right.
They all got taken prison.
The Farragut, wasn't it, I think? Or
Yeah.
I think. I-
These are details I don't. You're the details guy. So, would you recommend watching Strange New Worlds
Yeah.
if you've
And
got
I'd
it?
be interested to know what other people think of it, because it is a different take and it's a different kind of Star Trek from your grandpappy Star Trek.
At your grandpappy's TOS.
No, not by a long shot.
All right. Well, I'll definitely have to watch it again tomorrow and see what transpires.
Yeah. I mean, I am not even close to saying I'm done with it because, I watched Moon Knight and that's a lot worse. So I could definitely plug through a few more episodes before I come to any kind of a final decision. But there were things that I definitely liked about it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noted, it's funny, everything's so spacious. They got all this room, and I'm like, I'm not sure that's kind of a realistic of these ships that, they're spacious and all kinds of room, and you got, because even when you go back to the motion pictures, the original Star Trek, Star Trek 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Pretty tight quarters.
They were cramped. The quarters were small. The hallways were very small. You barely had room for two people to pass through them. This is it's like a dance hall down the corridors of the Enterprise.
The little bit I have seen from Star Trek Discovery, the ship really seems to have a feeling like that.
Yes.
The Enterprise itself. It really seems to share that Star Trek Discovery. So, we'll see. I maybe have only seen 1 or 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery. I've heard it's not necessarily worth my time to watch.
No, and I would say this, because I've watched some of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
And the first episode of Strange New Worlds, much, much better.
Yep.
Phenomenally better. So I have higher expectations for this show than I did Star Trek Discovery, because I stopped watching it. And then they were taking it off into they'd gone, through a wormhole, I think, and were off and away from the ship. And
they didn't end up in the Delta Quadrant.
Okay, see ya. I'm done. You lost me.
They didn't end up in the Delta Quadrant.
Basically the equivalent of that, I think.
But in that vein, since we're talking a little bit about Star Trek,
Yeah.
we got to do a New to Geek this week.
Okay.
I got to come up with a better intro than that. But for New to Geek this week, the one I'm wondering about, and I've been starting to watch a little more Star Trek, but one of the things with Star Trek, everybody's always got the one argument: who's the best captain in Star Trek? I know what your answer is, but that's for
Old
later.
school. I'm an old guy.
So, if you're new to Star Trek and you want to learn about captains, who are the captains you need to learn about?
I do think the original series, William Shatner, is absolutely indelible as James T. Kirk. Having played it through the original series, having played it through not just the 6 original Treks, but then the first of the Next Generation Trek movies. So he's got a very long history of playing that character. So I love William Shatner's presentation of Captain Kirk. I also thought Patrick Stewart is phenomenal. I thought what they did with Jean-Luc Picard in it, taking it a different direction and having different strengths and coming from, originally from France versus being an American and all of there were a lot of things about that character that I really, really enjoyed. And especially as that series went on, I thought Patrick Stewart was very, very good. And when you go watch one of my favorite Trek films is First Contact, which I think James Cromwell, by the way, is in that. James Cromwell's been in the news. You see him with his hand glued to the counter at Starbucks.
He's an ethical vegan.
Now, how in the hell could I ever watch James Cromwell again without laughing myself into a fit? You know, seeing him with his hand glued to the
Starbucks counter. But now think about it this way.
Oh, he's ruined it.
How many times do you actually think of him as James Cromwell versus, hey, that's the guy who plays Zephram Cochrane?
No, I think of him as James Cromwell in part because he was great in The Green Mile, which was another great movie that he was in. Not so great anymore with visions of him with his hand glued to the Starbucks counter.
He's an ethical vegan.
Yeah, like we don't have enough nuts running around. It's like, oh, James Cromwell, he's one of those. Lovely. So, I forget where we were.
We were talking about Star Trek captains.
Yes.
And you
Patrick Stewart is phenomenal.
Yes.
As Jean-Luc Picard. And then after that, it's all kind of, yeah. I like Jeffrey Hunter, who originally played Christopher Pike in Star Trek. The original pilot was called The Cage, and then they remade that into a 2-part series. They used parts of The Cage in The Menagerie, which is the only 2-part episode in the original Star Trek. And Jeffrey Hunter, I thought was very good. He had a wife at the time who was really kind of intent, it seemed, on ruining his career. She was making a lot of demands on him and on the show, in which they just said, yeah, goodbye, Jeffrey. And that's enter William Shatner. That's how he wound up getting the role. But I think, as we talk about, forgive me, Captain Janeway.
Yep.
There were things I liked about that character. There were things I didn't like, and it's not her.
No.
Kate Mulgrew is a terrific actress. I think she's a phenomenal actress. You and I have watched her in a number of different things.
Yep.
Orange is the New Black among them.
Yes.
She is a really powerful, gifted actress. So nothing against her. It's just was a weakly kind of drawn character.
Well, Voyager's kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the Star Trek franchise anyway. But if I remember reading right, she was actually not the original actress that was cast as Janeway.
Wow.
No, that was a YouTube video I was watching about Voyager. She was not the original one they had, I believe, was some kind of a French or French Canadian actress who came in and she was just terrible to work with. And they just couldn't stand her. So she was only in for like maybe one episode they had shot, and then they brought in Kate Mulgrew.
Yeah. Well, and if you're going to be that difficult, you're going to get, it's a little bit different once you become an established character, and then once you're well into it, and they got too much invested into you, then you become an ass. You can get away with some of that stuff. You not right out of the gate.
No.
I can imagine what it would be like today. Ugh.
So what makes, if we're going to establish Picard and Kirk as like the captains of Star Trek, obviously there's others. What makes those two notable?
I think one of the things that I liked about Kirk's character, and this was by design, is that you had Spock as the very logical, so he was always making the logical argument. McCoy was the very passionate, guy, and Kirk was in the middle of that.
Right.
So Kirk would take the best of both, and, Patrick's Captain Picard was different than that. He certainly welcomed input from his crew, but he just was a natural born decision maker.
Right. And if you ask me, I mean, you've kind of drawing just parallels or differences between those. Kirk's more kind of the cowboy
Yes.
kind of deal, and Picard's definitely more the diplomat.
Yes. I would agree.
And
Statesman.
The statesman, exactly.
You know, and Kirk could be a statesman, but that's not, you know,
his
not his
default
first
position.
his first impulse is as a military man,
Yep.
really, and it's, you know, phasers on stun. And
So
that's okay. I like that. Again, you know, you're producing a 1 hour show, and you've got to have a strong character like that who can propel the action.
who are your other notable captains? Who is like your honorable mention captain?
As far as good captains, that's probably would be Captain Pike. And I'll give Anson Mount a tip of the hat at this point.
Who's your honorable mention worst captain?
You know, you go back to the original series, and they had a thing in the original series where captains had gone bad. You start with the Doomsday Machine with Commodore Decker, who has basically they're attacking this planet killer and trying to destroy it, and he's telling Kirk he beamed his crew down to the third planet, and Kirk says, "There is no third planet. Don't you think I know that? There was, but not anymore." He's so over the top, but it was great at the time. I love that show. And so then Decker wants to try it again with the Enterprise, because now he knows what he did wrong. Well, seems to be intent on getting them killed.
Yep.
He winds up being a redeeming character because he flies the shuttlecraft into the Doomsday Machine and gives them an idea to destroy it.
Right.
So, but then there was Captain Tracy of the USS Exeter in his show called The Omega Glory original series, who thinks he's found the fountain of youth. He's found it. He has found the key to longevity on this planet, and his crew is dead. He's down on the planet using phasers against a lesser developed planet in clear direction of the Prime Directive, killing hundreds of people. He talks about this. He says, that they had sacrificed people. This is the so-called enemy. Sacrificed hundreds of people just to draw him out in the open. We drained 3 of our phasers, and they still came. So he's killing these people by the hundreds on board this planet. I'd say he's probably the worst of the captains. He didn't really live up to, Star Trek's creed at all.
No Prime Directive in that one.
No.
So who's okay? So that answers that question. So if I'm gonna say I know nothing about Star Trek captains and I want to start to learn a little bit more, what are some episodes I should maybe dig into?
Oh, you know what? I hadn't even thought about that. I would almost have to go look.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, to give you an honest answer as to what that would be.
So if I'm maybe
Doomsday Machine would be one.
Yep. If I want to see Kirk at his finest, what episodes am I looking to?
That's a great question. I don't know that I've got a I think one that I really like, one that Leonard Nimoy really liked, was Amok Time. It was the first show of season 2 of Star Trek. And that's where Spock goes through the pond far, and Kirk has to take him back to Vulcan, and he winds up battling Spock, doesn't realize it's a duel to the death. And so he McCoy winds up giving him a shot, fakes his death,
I got
and
you.
you get him back on board the Enterprise. That's a pretty great one. It shows, even early on in the series, it shows the levels to which Kirk will go for
His crew.
and especially
friend.
I think for Spock and McCoy, you see that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if I'm wanting to see just like a really good episode for Picard,
The Yesterday's Enterprise is a good one. That's where time has changed. He's on the bridge, something has happened, and he turns back around, and suddenly you see everything has changed.
Yep.
His uniform is slightly different, the bridge is slightly different. Tasha Yar, who was killed earlier in the series, is suddenly back on the bridge.
It's a good episode.
Yeah. That's a great one, because he winds up admitting to, and Rachel Garrett was another great captain. You want to talk about great female captains? Rachel Garrett of the Enterprise C.
Yep.
She was good.
Because that's about the only episode I think where you see the Enterprise C, isn't it?
Correct. And Picard winds up sending them back in time, knowing that they await certain destruction if they go back.
Yep.
And they do it anyway.
I can't think of the name of the episode. It's not so much like an action, more of an action Star Trek episode in Next Gen, but it's where Picard ends up getting sent. I don't remember the exact title of it, but he's sent somewhere where he like lives a lifetime.
Yes.
In like minutes.
I forget the name of that. The Inner Light. It's
The Inner
called
Light, yeah.
The Inner Light, and I like that one. That is one of my favorite Next Gen episodes.
It's a really good one for Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
I mean, it really focuses on him because it's like showing an entire life, I think, in like just minutes because he's gone.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, he's under for about 20 minutes, and then he comes out of it. And in that 20 minutes, he lives an entire life on this planet.
Yep.
And that was the way they had encountered a satellite out in space, and it took command of Picard, and this is what has happened. And it's the way that the people on that planet wanted to be remembered. They wanted somebody to literally live a so-called lifetime in their culture to remember them, to be able to carry it on.
Right.
And that was a really touching episode.
Well, not only that, I mean, they keep bringing back memories from that episode
Yes.
time and time again through the remainder of the run of Next Gen.
Yes. Because he actually had children on that,
Yep.
In that 20 minutes, he had children, he had a family, he
even had grandchildren.
yeah. So that was a powerful episode.
Who's your quirkiest captain?
What do you think? You've seen enough of those shows.
I'm going to go with Carol Freeman of the Cerritos.
Hands down. I would agree with that. Hands down.
Carol Freeman's on the from the Cerritos on Lower Decks.
And if you've not watched Lower Decks, even if you're not a big Star Trek fan, I've got to believe you're going to love Lower Decks, because it's funny. There's enough humor in there that you would enjoy it regardless. And if you know Star Trek, there's a ton of humor in it that you will get. Katie will laugh, and then I'll say, I'll bring up something. I'm like, well, did you catch this? And she'll look at me, and then I explain it. Excuse me.
They've brought back a number of characters from Next Gen.
Yes.
And I believe from Deep Space Nine, some of the other ones, and Voyager.
Because Will Riker has come back.
Yeah, Jonathan Frakes has come back on a number of them. Who's the John DeLance? Comes back as Q.
As Q.
But it's a great episode, and they're coming out with a season 3 now here on Paramount Plus, I think.
And I'll be there. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoy that show. And for for a lighter kind of Star Trek and fun, even for people who aren't super familiar with the series, I think that'd be something that I would have been comfortable watching with my kids. No trouble at all watching
Right.
that with them.
But
A lot of fun.
so now you know a little bit more about captains of Star Trek. Who to watch, who not to watch.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Benjamin Sisko's. I wasn't really a fan of Scott Bakula's on Enterprise. He was too emotional. Way too emotional. Like, man, you going through the military and we're just sending ships out into space, and he's like horribly emotional. That was just bad writing because he's a great actor. Scott Bakula is. It was just bad writing. I didn't like that show much at all.
Maybe we'll have to do best Vulcans next time.
There is only one Vulcan as far as I'm concerned.
There's like 4 or 5 of them.
True. Got Mark Leonard playing Sarek.
Yep. All right. So what do you got this week on do you have any odds and ends or?
I don't this week.
I just recently saw this week they released the new House of Dragons trailer.
Yes.
Because that's coming out in August on HBO. I'm a huge Game of Thrones junkie. I don't even know how many times I've watched that entire series and read through most of the books. But yeah, it looks really good. We were talking about Matt Smith a couple weeks ago when we were talking about New to Geek this week with Doctor Who. He's in there. I remember right.
And he looks pretty good.
Yeah, he's one of the main Targaryens, excuse me. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to that.
When does that come out?
August 21st. So
Okay.
we got a ways yet, but
a few more months.
It'll give me enough time to rewatch Game of Thrones again.
That's a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah, give me a few weeks. I'll have it done. Nobody binges like me.
Right.
What do we got for I'm on the wrong screen again. I'm just on the wrong screens all over tonight.
No worries. I was really saddened to learn of the death of George Perez. You know, we recently told you about the death of Neil Adams, who was a legendary artist of, especially in the Batman comics. George Perez has got a pretty broad background as well, but George Perez, like Neil Adams, has had his shot at doing Batman. And so it's one of the reasons why I've got an autographed copy of Batman 442. And this is from a series called The Lonely Place of Dying. It was a 5-part series. And this is part number 5 that you're seeing. And the autographs that you see there, going from top to bottom, are Mike DiCarlo, George Perez, and Marv Wolfman, who is another just huge name in comic books. Marv Wolfman had a tremendous run at both Marvel and at DC. So I was really saddened to learn about the death of George Perez. Again, some phenomenal work. And so I thought I'd share that. I actually bought this some time ago, and now I'm really, really glad that I did.
Yeah, especially since you have it autographed.
Yeah.
There we go. There's our
The Cave of
There, now I found it.
Huh? Cave of Wonders?
Yeah.
Took me a hot minute.
No worries. Other than that, I really don't have anything else to share. What have we missed?
Taking a look here. I think that's about it. I mean, it was a lot of reviews this week because it was just kind of like bam, 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 all right at the start of May.
Right.
There was all this new stuff that came out. And I think it's the end of May now, May 27th. Obi-Wan comes out. That's probably the next big thing.
I'm pretty jazzed for that. I really, based on, what we have seen recently with some of the other stuff that's been produced, disappointed in Doctor Strange 2, really disappointed in Moon Knight, really disappointed in Halo. I mean, a lot of this stuff that's come out recently has just been junk. I hope that's not going to be the case for this new Obi-Wan series.
No, I think it'll be good. I don't know. I saw that last trailer that we had watched. They just released another one, I think, like a few days ago. That's more like the final trailer.
Okay.
That's what we were watching earlier. Find it on YouTube or anywhere else. It's it looks good. You start seeing a little bit more of Darth Vader, as they're putting everything together. They've got a thing right now on Twitter where if you go on there, you can see all the new lightsabers. If you're really into that.
And
look,
and people are, which is cool.
And they're very different. I'll tell you that.
I just want to say, I'm not one of them. I mean, there are limits to my geekery.
Some of them are a bit different. We'll say that.
Yeah.
No, I hope that series. It's a 6-episode run, so we'll see. I just hope that it's not the normal Disney Plus formula.
How do you mean?
4 episodes of, and then 2 episodes of, oh, wow.
I'm expecting a lot more from this than we got from Boba Fett.
Yeah.
I have liked The Mandalorian, but
it was kind of the same thing with that one. That was a real slow dragger especially in the first season.
Yes.
To get going. And then I almost gave up on that one because it was long to get through those first few episodes. And then it was like, oh, what happened?
Right. Yeah, it really picked up.
But yeah.
And I don't know how much you can brighten Obi-Wan, and it certainly doesn't look like they're trying to do that.
No.
Because I got the feeling in some of the other stuff, they, especially as we talk about The Mandalorian, that they were trying to brighten that for kids, with the introduction. Oh, what a cute little, I forget his name. The little Yoda.
Oh, Grogu?
Grogu. That's it. So I thought they were really trying to sell that. And then you turn around with, there was some pretty heavy action in the midst of all that toward the end. But based on the trailers, which can be deceptive, no question, but based on the trailers that we've seen from Obi-Wan, it looks good.
Yeah. So I'm hoping we start off summer with a good.
Yeah. So heaven knows what we're going to talk about next week.
I'm sure
we'll find something, won't we?
We'll find something. And if there's nothing out there, we'll find something. Right. Lord knows we've got the entire Cave of Wonders to find, or Bat Cave to find something.
Yeah, yes. Well, thank you so much for letting us join you tonight. Please like us, don't like us. If you didn't like what you saw, give us thumbs down. If you did like the show, give us a thumbs up. We really, really appreciate it. Subscribe. And we'll be back next week. Same bad time, same bad channel.